Hey guys, today we are sewing a box cushion, and this video starts out a little bit the same way as the decorative tacks, in that we need this trim, this bias tape that we're cutting here, in order to make our piping for the box cushion. So here I'm making the bias tape for the trim for the chair for our decorative tacks, and I'm also making it for the box cushion, which I need about 14 feet for the top and bottom of the box cushion. So what I did here was I folded my material in half, and that creates a triangle. So I cut the triangle out of the fabric. Then I cut that on a diagonal, which gives me a 45. Then I make two 45s of the same, which you saw me doing with my yellow acrylic ruler there. Once I have two 45s, then they can fit at a 90 degree, and I've sewed them together just like I've shown you there. So once they're all sewn together and I have a long continuous bias tape, then I replace my sewing machine foot for my zipper foot, and here I am pretty much like keeping it really tight against the piping. You don't want to have like loosey-goosey piping, because then it creates like really messy corners, and you want it to be as tight as possible. So depending what kind of foot you have, this one works pretty good, and it's just a zipper foot. So once we have all of our piping sewn, then we can get into cutting the material for the box cushions. So I had disassembled the previous box cushion that I took off the chair, and I'm using that as a template for my new material. I just need to figure out where I want the material to sit, and I'm actually trying to pattern match with the back of the chair. So I want the cushion to continue on to the back of the chair, the cushion fabric design to continue from the chair onto the back of the chair. And I will also try to pattern match the boxing part as well. So what I did here was I just lined it up where I wanted the top of the box cushion to sit, and then I cut it out. I realized after that that I actually want both sides to be perfectly symmetrical, so I ended up having to cut this piece twice. So I wasted a little bit of material here. But since I usually order a little bit extra, and I take measurements after just to make sure that all my measurements are correct when I'm doing my pricing. So I recut this and just started again, because literally, like, you want to have both sides symmetrical. So you can see here how I fold the original piece over, and I'm going to use that as my template. And so I'm going to just figure out where I want it again, and I'm going to like make a mark and just like cut the half, because when you cut the half, then you can do like the other mirrored side and have it be perfectly symmetrical instead of like one side a little off, because then once you make your cushion, one side is going to be a little off, and then it's going to look funny. So I decided to redo this so that I could do it right, and then, you know, it turned out good. Each side's symmetrical. So I got that piece, and then so I need two of those pieces. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to flip it upside down and use the mirror piece, because I need two pieces, top and bottom. So I just use that as a template. Since both my sides are symmetrical now, they should both be the same. So now that our main pieces are cut, we're going to cut the pieces for the boxing. So I'm just lining up there where I want the middle of the boxing to be, and that will be the middle where I want to pattern match with the rest of the pieces that we just cut. So I need 51 inches total length. My boxing is 4 inches, and then I need a half an inch seam allowance. So I'm going to cut my boxing at 5 inches, just to keep in mind that where I want it to match up is at the bottom of the 4-inch and not the bottom of the 5-inch, because the 5-inch is going to be taken up in our seam allowance, which is 1/2 inch. So I have the essentially 5-inch boxing cut, and then we'll have to cut strips for the zipper, which is on the back end, and that's about 33 inches. It doesn't really matter about matching up the pattern in this one, so I just cut 2 strips at 3 inches, about like 29.5, I think it ended up to be. And 3 inches and 3 inches is 6 inches, but then we're going to fold it over to put the zip in there, and then there's a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so I've left a little bit of room there on each side. Sewing the zipper onto the back of our boxing panels, I'm actually just going to pin all of this before I sew it onto the zipper. This is pretty thick fabric, so I pin it and then I give it a quick iron just to keep it nice and flat, because when I sew it onto the zipper, I want it to be like nice and straight and look really clean. So I think I've used about a 1/2 inch, and I have my zipper foot still on my sewing machine. So I just line that up and put it face down and face sew it to my zipper. So I'm just sewing right down the face, right beside my zipper. And then I'm also going to like do the next side. So once I get to the end of the next side, then my boxing should measure about 5 inches at this point, because then I should still have 1/2 inch seam allowance for each side at a 4-inch boxing. And so once that's complete, then I attach the zipper, which I sometimes have problems with. It's kind of a pain. There's like a trick to it. Sometimes I cut the zip on an angle and hit the one side first and then pull it through. There's like a tool that you can buy that makes it easier, but of course I like to do things the hard way. Because I guess when you do things the hard way, then you figure out tricks and it eventually works. Notice that I just sewed at the end of the zip just in case it comes off, so it won't come all the way off. I just sewed a little bit at the end there. And then we go straight into sewing the piping onto our main pieces. So I'm going to start at the back of the cushion, on the top, the cushion of the top. And again, it's just a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. There are places at the corners where I give a little snip right before I turn my corner. You can see I give a little snip there, and that just allows those corners to stay nice and tight by relieving the material and giving it a little bit of space to turn a 90-degree angle. And sometimes if I see that the material's like getting a little like pulling in a direction, then I'll give it a relief cut because this is all like angles, but generally the piping shouldn't need too many unless it's like a 90-degree turn, which those ones kind of are. And once I reached the end, you can see I left some of the cording out a little bit, and I'll just release and cut a little bit of the cording and fold it onto each other. And then it's tough to see, but I do a 45 with the black velvet, the trim, and then I just sew that all together so that it creates a nice join. And then we go on and do the same thing on the next piece. Sew of the side panel onto the top part, and this is the, not the zipper yet, this is the main boxing. And I started in the middle because I wanted to make sure that the material was lined up where I wanted it to be. I realized after that I probably, instead of starting at the middle, I should have started all the way on the one side, went straight across the middle, and then ended up on the side at the end. But I did it this way instead, and made my life a little bit difficult when I was sewing it, but it still turned out pretty good. So I'm just, again, snipping where those 90 degrees are on the boxing, just to give it a little bit of room, because I'm going through lots of layers of fabric here. I got my piping and the other layer, and you want to make sure to keep it nice and tight against your piping because you don't want to see gaps. And then when I install the zipper, I want to make sure that that's also in the middle, and I think I pin it there. I also did some relief cuts here because now we're going in a circular, like lots of curves, and for everything to curve nicely and sit nicely on the boxing, there needs to be a little bit of like relief left in the fabric. So I just did relief cuts all the way down. Once I get to the point where the zipper boxing is going to meet the other boxing, I figured out where those were going to meet up exactly, and so there's going to be some extra material there. Once I have them nicely like snug up, I sew those two pieces together, and then I can come back right here and re-sew them to the main piece. Then it's just taking our bottom piece and pinning it to the rest of our assembly that we've just created and sewing the whole thing together. And I leave the zip open just a tiny bit because you're going to be closing this whole thing up, just so you don't, if the zips are all the way closed, it's hard to get it open. So leave the zip open just a little bit. It is amazing to see a project come to its completion. And don't forget to plump up all your feathers and stuffing that's in that pillow because you want it to be like nice and plushy. We're done this chair now, and all of the tutorials are also finished. If you'd like to check out some of the other ones, how to do decorative tacks, how to upholster the chair, how to strip the chair, please check out my YouTube, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. And here's some finishing pictures of the project and the cushion. Again, thanks so much for watching.